I've added some instructions for interpretation. This webinar will have live interpretation in Spanish, English, Hindi, and Marathi. So please just go, as the instructions in the screen says, just go to the globe icon in the lower bar menu and then choose Spanish for Spanish interpretation, English for English interpretation. For Hindi, you're going to be choosing, let me just double check, sorry, just so I don't make any confusions. For Hindi, you're going to be choosing the Chinese channel, and for Marathi, you're going to be choosing the Japanese channel. We do this because these are not default languages for Zoom, and then if anyone doesn't have the latest version of Zoom, they're not able to see the channels. So we have to use a default language, in this case, Chinese and Japanese. So just repeating, for Hindi, please choose Chinese channel, and for Marathi, please choose Japanese channel. And I'm gonna ask the translators to give these instructions in Spanish, in Hindi, and in Marathi now. Victoria, can you please share these instructions in Spanish, not on the Spanish channel, but in the general channel so everybody can hear you? Oh, great, thank you. But actually, I think we need to say in the general room, because if there's someone that's not in the Spanish channel, they might not hear you. All right, the interpreters are telling me they already told the same instructions in the respective languages, so we should be fine. I am gonna ask our moderator, Ellie from Aro, to introduce the first speaker so we can start the webinar. So thanks again for joining. And then just a quick explanation. The EPR series is a series of webinars, and along with guides, case studies, and other learning materials that Globalrec is presenting, which aims to provide useful and effective tools for WIEGO speakers and WIEGO speakers organizations to engage in EPR laws and proposals, and also try to bring more people in the conversation so we can broaden the discussion around EPR. So this is the second webinar, and welcome and thank you everyone. Ellie, please.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining this webinar, which is a very important and a very relevant topic for everyone throughout the world. I think we're all aware of all the many multiple challenges that face us as far as environmental issues are concerned. And in particular, the issue of extended producer responsibility is of concern for some of us who work with informal waste reclaimers or waste pickers. So we have a full panel and a full range of voices that will be making important contributions in this discussion. We have people from the Cooperative SWaCH, we have waste picker representatives, industry, and also representatives from the Pune municipal corporations. Without further ado, if I could perhaps introduce our first speaker, which is Alok Gupta. And just to apologize to everyone, I am going to be severely harming your names, and I hope that you will forgive the pronunciation that I will be, which are incorrect. But Alok is head of operations of SWaCH. And he will basically start us off, by giving us a background on the SWaCH co-op, and over to you, Alok, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. So can I share my screen? Yeah.
Yes. please.
Yes. Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. So thank you for this webinar so that we all can discuss
Alok, we've lost you.
Yeah, it seems like I can still see his screen, but I can't hear him. I think his internet connection had a problem because he disconnected. Let's wait a couple of seconds to see if he reconnects. If not, we can go to the next speaker and then we go back to Alok.
Yes, yeah, agreed.
He'll be able to join in a minute.
Great, thank you.
Am I audible? Lubna?
Who is this? Oh, there we go. I
Um,
think you're back.
Yes. So just sorry. Yes. So I'm here just to share a story of SWaCH Cooperative in 10 slides, a big thing. SWaCH is a model which is essentially a story about transforming lives by including the margins and finding in the opportunity in the diversity. So these two pictures actually tell all about SWaCH. There was times when there were waste speakers who were trying to collect waste from a dump space to a city which is around 3,500 waste pickers who are integrated formally into the system, and now they are directly collecting waste from the citizens with the use who have dignity of their
Unfortunately, we seem to have lost connection again. If we can give it a couple more minutes, please.
Hello. Yes. Sorry to ask again, but am I audible? As again disturbance, and so I got disconnected in between. Yes. So I'll start again. So that's I'm here to introduce SWaCH, and SWaCH, as I said, all about transforming life by including the margins. So these two photos actually complete the story of SWaCH, because in the past years, 99, Panchayat, who started the integration of speakers by giving them formal ID cards, and then by acknowledging that there is a segment of a community who's working towards waste management and who has kind of formal occupation, which is about trying to collect, trying to segregate waste and have allied activities which can be done in this waste management. So, but in the past, it was done in a very haphazard way, and which was in a way, and it was causing hazards to the society or the norms of the society. But over the years, came an informal one where these waste started collection of segregated waste at through doorsteps, having direct connect with the citizens. And this is how our board meetings look like. The model is about the people who are working on the field are getting together once in a month or and discussing that how we all can improve together, what benefit can we provide to the city, and what actually is the core. So
Alok, we're actually hearing you really bad. The sound is breaking a little bit, and the interpreters can hear you well, so they can translate to English and Spanish and the other languages. Could we maybe go to Lubna, which is the next speaker, and then in the meantime, maybe you can try to see if your connection gets better, or if you can maybe move around to see if it improves a little bit. Does that sound like a plan, Lubna?
Oh.
I think we lost him again.
Hi, I want to invite Lakshmi to give the brief on Swatch. I think she has better network and she'll be able to give the brief as well.
I'm sorry, what was that, Lubna?
Just one request. Can someone share the screen, please? Because I don't really have the screen. And can you hear me, all of you?
Yes, we can hear. I'll share the PPT.
Thanks. So I think as Alok was saying, and many of you must have seen the first screen for a long time, so I can just start ahead. The effort of SWaCH has been to try and integrate the informal waste pickers who are collecting waste from the streets and bins and landfills to into the municipal solid waste management framework through what started off as a semi-formal and has grown to a slightly more formal relationship. So the waste pickers over the past 15 years, more or less, who have been members of the trade union KKPKP are now integrated in a waste collection system, which is under the aegis of a cooperative SWaCH. The cooperative itself was formed as a special partnership between the Pune Municipal Corporation, the urban local body, and the waste pickers trade union. It's understood in the city as a pro-poor public-private partnership. The idea being to ensure that waste pickers who are traditionally seen as people who perhaps may not get the space to enter into formal contracts with the municipality, waste collection contracts like other players, get that space to do so. So this has been the shift in the life of a waste picker. Typically, earlier used to go through the bins or landfills or the streets to collect waste. Now they go around door to door, like they've shown in the photograph on the right. They're collecting waste from the doorstep. Can you show the next slide, please? Okay, I think the next slide shows. I'm sorry, I haven't seen this presentation, so I'm just going to talk a little bit of just based on what I already know. So this is a typical board meeting. Our boards are constituted of waste pickers. So the trade union itself, KKPKP, has a board with around 15 waste pickers, and the SWaCH Cooperative also has a board with waste pickers. There are only 2 non-waste picker members on the board. Most decisions are taken by this 15-member board, although in a slightly more mass-based democratic way. Each member of this 15-member body is herself elected from a larger panel of representatives. Each group of approximately 50 waste pickers, which service one geographical pocket of the city, elects one leader, and each of these representatives elect the board. So the board is constituted of a geographical representation of waste pickers, and most of the structure within SWaCH matches the municipal waste collection structure, the solid waste management structure, so that it's easier to integrate with the formal system. This is the background. The trade union was registered in 1993. In 1996, we argued that waste pickers should have identity cards, because waste pickers before that, even though they were unionized, had an identity card that was only given by the trade union. We argued that the municipality needs to endorse the I-card, because the work of waste pickers is saving municipality a lot of money. The municipality appreciated that in 1996, agreed to give them identity cards. In 2000, we did a study with the ILO and actually established the economic contribution made by waste pickers to the Pune Municipal Corporation by reducing their solid waste management costs. In 2007, the cooperative was registered, the SWaCH Cooperative, which was based on a lot of advocacy work done by KKPKP, the trade union, as well as some formal and informal studies done to establish that this kind of model would not only be economically efficient because the municipality would save money. Typically, a waste collection contract costs at least 20 times what the SWaCH waste collection contract costs to the municipality. The other part of it is that waste pickers who are otherwise marginalized and treated as workers, and sometimes not even as workers in formal contracts, will have their own autonomy and agency and will be recognized in this entity. They will be able to take decisions. They will be participating democratically, sitting across the table with municipal officials, with elected representatives, and arguing for their contracts with the municipality. The levels of segregation, recycling are much higher in this kind of model. The positive environmental impact of this model is much higher. The actual waste picker numbers who are integrated in a model like this is much higher than in any other kind of waste collection contract. So the number of waste pickers who are integrated in the SWaCH model are around 3,500, and any kind of motorized model that a contractor might run will easily halve these numbers. So generally, we all understand that informal waste collection and the scrap trade generates a huge number of livelihoods. Recycling itself as a sector generates 20 times the livelihoods that any capital-intensive centralized processing unit will. And within that, if one can actually organize a decentralized collection system, the overall impact on labor and the numbers that can get integrated is much higher. Right now, the latest that we're working for is moving beyond just the waste collection to newer frontiers, to seeing whether we can actually have large quantities of waste composted in situ, so that our waste collection is not only collection and taking to the next level, but to ensure that the waste is composted at the point of collection itself. Can you move to the next slide? The administrative structure, as I said, of SWaCH parallels a little bit the municipal structure. So we, apart from the fact that there is a board that that's represented here, that you have waste picker leaders elected from among the general body of waste pickers, of the 3,500 waste pickers, and the leaders then further elect the waste picker board. The board itself is, in a sense, the entity to which all the staff of SWaCH are accountable. The SWaCH staff structure mirrors more or less the levels and the hierarchy within the municipal structure, just so that it's easier to interact with the waste collection system there. The actual model looks like this. The generator of different kinds, both residents, commercial establishments and institutions, as well as within residents, we do consider slum residents or people who live in a very small shanties and ghettos, they have a separate waste collection system, which works slightly differently from the mainstream collection system, because the per household fee that each household pays is obviously much lower in a slum. The paying capacity is less, and the dry waste that is generated is also less. So the municipality offers a small subsidy for the collection of waste from the slum households, and the slum dwellers themselves offer some waste collection cost. The waste is collected by a pair of waste pickers who go around with a pushcart and buckets. They collect largely segregated waste. Pune boasts of fairly high levels of segregation compared to other cities in India. They collect the segregated waste. It's typically segregated into at least organic and dry waste. We're also arguing and advocating right now for the segregation of sanitary waste and what is otherwise rejected waste, which essentially is waste that has no value for either the waste picker or doesn't go into organic waste processing and therefore has to go to the secondary collection system. The dry waste that they can recycle and sell goes to material recovery facilities where they exist. Where they don't exist, waste pickers work within housing societies and areas and try and further segregate the waste there so that they can add more value. They sell it to the scrap shop, who then sells it to the recycler. The waste picker is given the entire rights over the recyclables. So all the money that accrues from sale of recyclables stays with the waste picker. The organic waste goes into the secondary collection system if it cannot go into a composting facility, from where it goes to a transfer station, municipal transfer station, from where it is taken to a landfill. To be honest, these are not landfills, they are more or less dump sites. We have very, very small areas of the existing dumping ground, which is normally converted into a scientific landfill. It's usually less than a 50th or 100th of the overall area that is scientifically handled. The rest of it is largely a dumping ground. So broadly, this is how the model looks. We are now arguing for more and more of the organic waste to be composted, because otherwise segregation is a bit pointless if one cannot ensure that the integrity of the segregated streams are maintained. If one can have good quality organic waste, it makes most sense to compost it or convert it to biogas in situ or as close to the point of generation as possible. So one is reducing on transporting the waste across large distances to the centralized landfill. So this is broadly how the model works. I think
did you stop talking, Lakshmi, or is because we can hear anything?
Hi, I don't think we can hear Lakshmi, but I think that's a good introduction to the Swatch model, and what Supriya and I will be speaking about will sit on this introduction to Swatch.
Perfect, thanks, Lubna. So you're gonna carry on, right?
Yes, I'll carry on. So I'll give a very brief introduction to the ITC model, and then I'll ask Supriya Tai to tell us about her experience with the model. Okay, so very broadly, the Swatch ITC multi-layered plastic collection system was started in 2019. It's been running for almost 3 years now. And I'll just give you a sense of the way the system works. So there are about 3,500 waste pickers in Pune, like Lakshmi said, who are all collecting waste from about 200 to 300 households per pair, which means that they are traveling on foot on push carts. And the way this fits into the municipal solid waste management system is that we have a secondary collection system where a group of 10 waste pickers is able to give the wet and the dry waste to 2 separate vehicles at that feeder point. So our system sits on that model where there is a PMC vehicle, a corporation vehicle for wet waste, 1 corporation vehicle for dry waste, and a vehicle from our project which collects the multi-layered plastic from waste pickers. So it's a very, very decentralized system in which we reach out to about 1,000 waste pickers every single day, where the trade happens exactly like it would at a scrap shop. So they are paid on the spot per kg fee based on how many kilos of multi-layered plastic they are selling that day. From here, it goes to a few decentralized storage spaces across the city, and then it's aggregated to a central warehouse where we further sort it, bale it, and then send it to a recycler. Is being charitable. Usually we send it to a processor or anyone who's able to accept the material. So that is essentially how the system is structured. I'll speak to Supriya Tai about the system before we get into more details. Okay, Supriya Tai, थोडक्यात. Sorry, should I go ahead?
Yeah, please go ahead. I was just about to say that to everyone, and that Supriya is a waste reclaimer. She's a waste speaker and a member of SWaCH. Thank you. Yes.
So I'll just ask Supriya in her own words to introduce herself and give us a background of her work before and after the formation of SWaCH. Supriya, काय तुमचा परिचय, काम कसं चालू होतं अगोदर आणि SWaCH नंतर कसं चालू आहे?
माझं नाव सांगू का?
हो, पूर्ण परिचय सांगा.
सगळी माहिती म्हणजे सगळे काम करायची माहिती.
हो.
बारकीपणापासून नाही सांगत मी. सांगायचं.
हो, थोडंफार सांगा.
सगळं
डेपो मध्ये करत होतो त्यानंतर.
हा, माझं नाव सुप्रिया दिलीप भडकवाड. मी बारक्यापणापासून म्हणजे कचऱ्यामध्ये काम करते. पहिलं प्लास्टिक म्हणजे सगळ्यात पहिलं प्लास्टिक, काच, पत्रा आणि पोती सुद्धा वेचली ती. त्याच्यानंतर मग लग्न झाल्यावर बी याचंच होते मी आणि वेचून आम्ही त्याच्यावर आमचं घर चालत होतं. आणि त्याच्यानंतर मग पुण्यामध्ये सगळ्या प्लास्टिक असं कचरा जाऊ रस्त्यामध्ये पडायला लागला. म्हणजे असं जिथं कुंड्या आहे तिथं जास्ती कचरा दिसायला लागला.
कुठे वेचायचं तुम्ही?
आम्ही डेपोला यायचो पहिलं. आपल्या इथं डमकीनवर यायचं होता.
So her name is Supriya Dilip Bhadakwad. She has been picking waste for the past 30 years since she was 10 years old. Earlier, she used to pick waste from a depot, which is basically an open dump site. And at that point, when she had started picking waste, the city was very, very polluted. There was a lot of waste lying all over the city. And at that point, she used to pick waste from the depot. Depot
नंतर मग डेपोत कधलंही असं म्हणजे ते डेपोच्या जागेवर जळत होता आणि माणसं म्हणायची प्रति आमच्या देवाच्या उरुला इथला बंद झाला आणि देवाच्या उरुला गेलो तिथं माणसं म्हणायची लोक अडवायची अशी कचरा टाकू नका आमची इथं घाण पडती लई कचरा टाकू नका म्हणून कॉर्पोरेशनच्या लोकांनी सांगलं आपल्या कागदच्या लोकांना सांगितलं लक्ष्मीला सांगितलं पौर्णिमाला सांगितलं की तुम्ही कचऱ्याची व्यवस्थापन करा की दारोदार जाऊन कचरा घ्या आणि ते जेवढं पुण्यामध्ये जेवढा कचरा असा पडतो रस्त्यावरचा किंवा डम्पिंगला जातो ते थोडं कमी करा वाल्या कचऱ्याचा खत बनवा आणि जे पुनर्निर्मित आहे ते सगळं तुम्ही चांगलं व्यवस्थापन करा.
मी सांगते. So she explained that earlier she used to pick waste from a dump site that was near her house. After it closed, she used to travel almost 30 kilometers to pick from the main dump site, what used to be the main dump site of Pune city. They face a lot of access to waste issues there because when you have one centralized dump site, there is a lot of stress on that dump site, a lot of waste going to that dump site. So the corporation needed a solution to the waste management issue. So, and we, KKPKP, a trade union of waste pickers, were that solution. And that is how SWaCH originated, to fulfill the gap of door-to-door waste collection so that we could channel the waste properly to different things. So we could channel wet waste to composting, we could channel dry waste to recycling as far as possible. And we were the only ones who could do that.
म्हणजे जसं लक्ष्मीने सांगितलं तसं की त्यांचा बी जेवढं ते बिगाऱ्यांचा खर्च डिझेलचा खर्च वाचत कचऱ्यामुळे कचरा कमी जागेवर जिरल्यावर ज्यांच्या सोसायटीमध्ये जे असतील ना खत बनायचं तिथं वाला कचरा जिरेल आणि जी सुका कचरा जी टाकणार आहे त्यातलं जी कचरा वेचक आहे ती पुनर्निर्मितीचं सामान काढून थोडंच कचरा जाईल त्याच्यामध्ये म्हणजे प्रदूषण पर्यावरणाला जरा कमी प्रमाणात जास्ती वाढण्याच्या ऐवजी.
So like Lakshmi said, she says that we are able to solve many issues. One is the cost issue. We reduce the load on the system. We are involved in situ composting, which means less wet waste has to be transported across the city for processing. It gets processed on site. Even dry waste, we pick up whatever we can sell, whatever we can recycle. So there is no need for it to go into the secondary collection system. And we are sending it for recycling. also all the salaries that the corporation would have to pay, they don't have to pay us, and we are able to do it at a much lower cost.
कॉर्पोरेशनच्या त्यांनी सांगितलं की सोसायटीकडून तुम्हीच संस्था म्हणून पैसे उभा करायचं आणि तुम्हीच त्याला पैसे द्यायचे म्हणून आम्ही फक्त कचरा नेण्याची मदत करणार आणि टाकून येण्याची पैशाची मदत नाही करणार म्हणून.
So the way it is that the corporation picks up the waste from us, and we get our user fee directly from the citizens, as well as we get paid from whatever we are able to sell. तर तुम्ही नेमकं काय काय वेचतात?
आम्ही वेचतो म्हणजे सगळंच घेतो जे लागतंय तेवढं, म्हणजे प्लास्टिक घेतो, पत्रा घेतो, काच घेतो, तसली बाटली घेतो आणि लोखंड घेतो, वायर घेतो, तांबा घेतो, जेवढं विकणार आहे तेवढं सगळं घेतो, फक्त टायर चप्पल घेत नाही.
Okay.
थर्मोकॉल.
So I asked her what materials is she able to sell. She said many types of plastic, some types of metal, glass, paper, cardboard she's able to sell. What all is she not able to sell? तुम्ही काय काय वेचू शकत नाही?
आम्ही वेचू शकत नाही म्हणजे टायर नाही वेचू शकत, थर्मोकॉल नाही वेचू शकत, चप्पलचं लबराचं वेचू शकत नाही आणि अजून ते टुपा वेचू शकत नाही. अजून हे असल्या हे बाटल्याला नवीन आलेलं प्लास्टिक तयार केलेलं हे वेचू शकत नाही, परत हे वेचू शकत नाही आणि हे ह्याचं समोरचं वेचू शकतो पण हे घेत नाही.
So she named a few items that she's not able to sell. Tires, these medicine bottles and brown colored pet bottles, a lot of tubes, so face wash and toothpaste kind of tubes, a lot of these melamine dinner set items, cups, bowls, plates are not able to be sold. She's not able to sell shoes and tire and anything of rubber.
बूट जे असतात ना, बूटचा खालचं फुसफुशीत आपण घालतो ते तर अजिबात घेत नाही.
So no rubber or soft soled shoes are able to be sold.
ते लबर वेगळाच आहे आणि हा सूतचा लबर वेगळाच आहे.
हो, सो ते वेचू शकत नाही.
घेऊ शकत नाही.
मग आपलं हे मिक्समेनचा प्रोजेक्ट नंतर काय चेंज झालं?
मिक्समेन नंतर ना आपलं कुरकुऱ्याची कागद आणि मॅगीची कागद म्हणा, अजून जी बिस्किटाची कागद, चहापत्तीची कागद, पावडरची कागद, ते मिक्समेन फायदा झालाय.
So I asked her what change has happened to this project. तुम्ही दाखवा ना ते. That there are some types of plastic which she was...
ना अजिबात सगळ्या पुण्यामध्ये होतं ते आता कमी झाले.
So the big change is that there are some kind of materials, particularly multi-layered plastics, which didn't have a rate at all before, which are now sold, because of which there is less litter, as well as more of this material that speakers are able to sell. मग एका आठवड्यात किती निघतं मिक्समेन तुमचं आणि किती पैसे सुटते?
आता एक आठवड्याचं 30-35 किलो निघते. एक आठवड्यात 35 किलो निघलं तरी मिक्समेन मध्ये 200-300 रुपये निघतात.
Okay. So I asked her how much additional earning does she have from this project because of selling mixmen. So in a week, she said she is able to earn 200 to 300 rupees additional. 1 rupee is about 70 rupees is about $1. So that's about $3 to $4 per week. Okay. मग EPR म्हणजे काय?
नवीन आलेला कायदा EPR म्हणजे तेच ना की प्लास्टिक ज्या कंपनीने तयार केलंय तीच विल्हेवाट लावणार आहे ती. मग त्यांनी विल्हेवाट लावणारच, त्यांनी ज्यांनी जे पैदा केलंय त्यांनी ना विल्हेवाट लावली, ते आमच्याकडूनच विल्हेवाट लावा, आमच्याकडून घ्या म्हणूनच विल्हेवाट लावावी, का की आम्ही ह्याच्यावरच आमचं सगळं जीवन आहे सगळ्या लोकांचं. तर त्यांनी जर स्वतःची जर माणसं लावली तर मग आम्हाला काहीच भेटणार नाही, म्हणजे आमचं पोटा पाण्याचं सगळंच संपलं.
आणि अजून कोणी करतं, त्यांना करता येईल का?
नाही करता येणार, अजून करता येणार नाही का की आमची जेवढी स्वच्छची लोक कसणार वेचणारे जेवढे आहे ती तेवढे कचऱ्यामध्ये घाण म्हणत नाही, ती पॅड येतं, डायपड येतं, लोकांचं औषध गोळ्यांचं येतं, इंजेक्शनाचं येतं रोगांचं, तरी सुद्धा हात घालून आमची लोकच काढतात. ती त्यांना सवय असते ना, त्यांनी येसलेलं असतं या, कुणी 10-10 वर्षे, कुणी 20 वर्षे, कोण तर म्हातारं झाले पण ते येतातच, म्हणत नाही की घाण आहे की काय. जर नवीन जर शिकलेले लोक किंवा कुठली जरी लोक कामाला लावली तरी ती काढतली, पण किती 8 दिवस 15 दिवस काढतली. जसं आम्ही 30-40 वर्ष काढतो तशी ती लोक अजिबात काढणार नाही.
So I asked her what she thinks about EPR, what is EPR and how should companies implement EPR. So she explained that EPR means that companies should take responsibility for not just the product but the waste that comes along with their product, and they should set the system for collecting that waste. And her appeal to producers is that they should work with us because we have been doing this work for many years. We are able to do it better than other people. We have done it when there was no money in the system. And we have been doing it for so many years, touching things like diapers and sanitary pads, which other people just don't have the stomach to do. We have been doing it. She has personally been doing it for 30 years. Other people have gotten old picking waste and still continue to pick waste. So if there is a system in which we can get better compensated, then we should only do it. You can even try giving money to other people and asking them to put their hands in the waste and pick up. And you will see that they'll do it for 15 to 20 days and will not be able to sustain it the way we can. So if we need to set a system, if companies need to set a system to pick up these materials, they should do it with us because we are waste experts. अजून काय बोलायचं? प्रश्न विचारला त्यांनी प्रश्न विचारला तर तुम्ही बोला.
सांगेल ना.
ठीक. Okay. Okay. So I will now give a brief about the system from more of a systems perspective, what the advantages and disadvantages of this system are. Okay. So I explained the way the system is structured on a day-to-day basis. It's been running for about 3 years. The big positive features of this system are that the industry partner, ITC, is working directly with the waste picker organization.
ITC हा जो industry partner आहे, तो directly स्वच्छ बरोबर काम करतो.
Waste pickers are also compensated fairly for their contribution through a premium in rate. So a material that fetched absolutely no value earlier is
पूर्वी
now
ज्या मालाला काहीच किंमत मिळत नव्हती त्या मालाला आता वाजवी भाव मिळतो या व्यवस्थेमुळे.
At which time we were not able to actually collect a large amount of waste, but now that it's 4 rupees, it actually works out.
आणि आता त्याला वाजवी भाव मिळत असल्यामुळे या प्रकारचा कचरा चांगल्या पद्धतीने गोळा होतो.
Ashwini, we're hearing Marathi interpretation on the English channel.
Is able to channel material through the informal waste supply chains as well. We also work with scrap shops, some waste picker owned scrap shops, as well as some informal sector scrap shops. And we are able to add materials to the existing chain rather than take away materials or set up a parallel system. And this system directly targets a material that is non-recyclable. So one of the big risks with EPR is that for the more highly recycled material like PET, HDPE, PP, LDPE, the danger is that it is very easy to remove these materials from the existing informal sector. And once the viable materials are taken away, all waste pickers and scrap dealers and the people up the chain in the informal sector are definitely going to lose out on their source of livelihoods. So one thing that we would advocate for EPR to have is adding materials onto the system which are currently either not possible because they are non-recyclable or are not possible because they are economically unviable to actually handle and cover the costs of their own recycling. And lastly, it's decentralized and inclusive. Another danger with EPR is that it's much cheaper to set up centralized and high capital intensive systems. So set up one central facility where you get waste coming directly from all the households in the city. In that way, very few jobs are created and many livelihoods are displaced. If one big sorting and baling facility is set up, even if it's handling a lot of waste, it can only create 20 to 30 jobs at the cost of displacing a few thousand waste pickers. So one very big positive of this system is because it starts at the decentralized level, we are able to include a huge number of people in this system rather than give a few people sustainable livelihoods at the cost of many others. So just a few key statistics from the project. In just under 3 years of operation, we've collected about 920 tons of multi-layered plastic. There was a pause for about 4 months last year because of COVID restrictions. So it's more like 2.5 years. We've been able to reach over 1,000 waste pickers. And like Supriya said, the additional income from MLP is around 600 rupees per month. So this is the way the system funds flow. So like I explained, the collection, transport, and aggregation function are all done by SWaCH, for which SWaCH pays the cost at the start, like through the month. At the end of it, Swatch is able to sell, if it can, some material to a recycler, though sometimes material is sent for free and sometimes Swatch is even needed to pay a tipping fee. But assuming that there is some cost recovery from the material, there is no way that that cost recovery covers the entire system cost. Most times it doesn't even equal the cost at which it's purchased from waste pickers. So if we buy it at 4 rupees from waste pickers, we are usually able to sell it at less than even 4 rupees, which excludes all of the overheads that are involved in collecting, transporting, aggregating, sorting, baling, and maintaining the documentation for this system. So there is a loss which is borne by ITC, which is the industry partner. So whatever the viability gap is to plug the loss and keep the system at break even is borne by the industry, so the system can stay afloat month after month. So though there are several positive things about the way this system is structured, there are still a few challenges to EPR that we hope will be addressed in the coming years. One is that in voluntary EPR, which as yet it remains voluntary, the plastic producers or the industry partner is able to determine the price. And most often reducing costs is the bottom line of any feedback we get on the system. We are able to produce, we're a waste picker organization, we are able to collect huge amounts of the waste. And we will be able to collect huge amounts of any other waste as long as we are paid a fair price. But it comes at a high cost. Inclusion comes at a cost that companies may not be willing to pay in absence of strong mandates. The other issue is that as a waste picker organization, we can't afford the long lines of credit which come from both ends, from the processors as well as from the industry partner. We are at the difficult position of dealing with both the informal sector as well as the formal sector. And a waste picker organization finds it very, very difficult to manage those very, very long lines of credit that are involved with dealing with large industry partners and large material processors. Though EPR and even our system places the cost burden squarely on the industry partner, one issue remains of finding a sink for the material. The material remains challenging to process. And in our experience, we have sent it to several different people, most often not recyclers, but processors who are not able to consistently accept large quantities of materials. So our general experience is that at the beginning, everyone is keen for send us 100 tons a month, and we send them 30 tons a month for 3 months, and they start having issues with their machines. They're not able to run it financially viably. And the plants inevitably shut down, and every so often we are stuck in a position of having all of this plastic with us and nowhere to send it. So though this onus of the system is with the industry partner, on a day-to-day basis, the onus of actually finding a sink for this material falls on the waste picker organization and puts us in a very difficult position. And the cost recovery is also very low. So negotiating with processors puts us again in a difficult position, because we are usually in a position where we need to offload material very quickly and do not have much bargaining power, because there is no strong legislation on cost recovery or how much this should cost. Another big aspect of EPR, which gets somewhat shot down by this system because of the limited recycling options, is that there are very few options for local processing of material. So what good we are able to do environmentally by diverting this material away from a landfill or a dump site or the oceans, we perhaps end up cancelling it out because we are sending it so far in through road transport. So investing in local processors, local recycling options that are able to handle this material will really go a long way to make the system environmentally much more sustainable. So our recommendations to make inclusive EPR sustainable and more inclusive of informal sectors, though there are many of them, I'll just go over a few highlights that would help our system. Waste streams should be integrated. One major danger of EPR is that waste streams get fragmented. You'll have someone for PET who wants to set up a warehouse that only deals with PET, someone for HDPE who wants to set up a warehouse only for HDPE. But there is already a sector that has been very efficiently recycling huge quantities of these materials, especially in India. And we argue that all waste should be channeled through this. Whatever additional funding is being channeled to recycling under EPR should come to the actors within this sector and fill the gaps that we actually need for EPR. Documentation and traceability is a very stringent requirement of EPR, at least, or it seems to be that it will be in India. These are the kind of things, capacity building of informal sector workers, that funds can be channeled towards rather than removing materials from the system. Add materials to the system, make non-viable materials viable, and apply funding towards capacity building of waste workers who have been doing this work for decades in the absence of any support or adequate compensation for their work. Local recyclers for all materials is a very strong way forward. We have plans of pan-India EPR, but what we really need is local recyclers. We shouldn't have to send material a few districts or a few 100 kilometers away. Waste management should get more and more decentralized, or else we don't bring much good to the environment overall. There is a very big role for legislation to play. Like I said, costs remain a big gray area right now. There is no state mandated cost for EPR, how much producers should bear for different types of material. So that bargaining power really sits with the industry, because it is rarely that waste picker organizations have such a big bargaining power. Informal sector inclusion is not mandated yet, and even if it is mandated, the penalties for it should be high enough that it is not easier to set up a less inclusive system that takes material away from the informal sector. A responsibility of ensuring material recyclability needs to be, in my opinion, more squarely on the producer. So we are more than able to collect any material, but figuring out technically whether that material can be processed, how it can be processed, is something that should be included more strongly in EPR. Right now, our legislation doesn't really make any difference between recycling and end-of-life processes. So incineration, pyrolysis, plastic to fuel, they're all treated equally. Ideally, there should be a strong disincentive for end-of-life processes. The more recyclable, truly recyclable material is, the more cost recoverable it is, and so it pays for itself. If it's not recyclable, it shouldn't end up in waste. And there should be a strong incentive for producers to actually use the material that we are recycling. As there's more demand created for using recycled material, it makes this sector more and more viable, and it will be able to continue in a sustainable manner without additional funding. So there are a few things that could really be strengthened through strong legislation, in the absence of which waste picker organizations remain at the mercy of industry partners like ITC to voluntarily engage in EPR at a higher cost and more painful dealing with waste picker organization than a private organization. So strong legislation would go a long way to ensure that EPR is inclusive and also sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lubna. We're now gonna hear from Ankit, the industry perspective on what Lubna was talking about, inclusive EPR.
आता आपण अंकित
Thanks, Eduardo, and I would like to acknowledge all the previous speakers, Lakshmi, Lubna, for really, describing what the model is and its benefits, also its challenges, and also especially Supriya for giving life what the actual experience of working on the ground is. I'm really humbled to be part of this conversation because I'm, in all honesty, I don't work on the ground. It's really SWaCH who does all the work, and we're really part of the planning and the funding cycle, but like to share some perspective from the industry, not industry, just from ITC's perspective, why we sort of, choose to work in this way with Swatch. What advantages do we see in this kind of a model? As ITC, we're a very large FMCG company in India, and we sort of, we have a philosophy of triple bottom line. And we've been doing a lot of work in solid waste management, even before the law came in on sort of EPR as such. So we had some conception of what a good inclusive EPR model could look like, right? So we had certain basis our experience that we should be working with the municipal collection system if we have to work at scale. We need to involve the waste collectors who are part of that system. We were also aware that there needs to be a market price which incentivizes the participants to actually be part of the system, right? It can't be voluntary in that sense. There has to be a market price that incentivizes the participants to be part of the system. And we were also aware of how important it is to have an efficient, like a collection system, which obviously waste collectors guarantee, and even small things like logistics and bailing and other things like that. And at the end, source segregation is quite important. Like Lakshmi focused on that, how the Swatch model works in Pune, how they try to get, they're trying to move from two categories, from organic and dry waste to like other categories. It is the segregation at source which the Swatch model ensures is why Swatch is able to channelize the waste collected to multiple parties. So even though that's a big challenge right now, but we're probably one of the few projects in the entire country where material goes for other applications besides incineration in a cement plant. So that's a big advantage that segregation at source brings. So we had these principles in mind, and they completely aligned, with the Swatch's way of working. So what makes this model inclusive is by Swatch being Swatch. It takes sort of a lot of the waste collector issues. It ensures that we are sort of keeping the waste collector at the center of the model. So that's what it does. And then we obviously put a market price in place for all materials, including MLP. We conceptualize innovative collection systems. The Swatch team has looked at even multiple ways of how we can, so that the waste goes straight from the house in a segregated way and eventually reaches a recycler. So we looked at multiple ways in which we can, both efficiently and keeping the waste collectors' interest in mind, collected through this decentralized system where they don't have to spend too much effort going from place A to place B. The vehicle goes to the place where is a designated collection point where they anyways come to give the organic waste to the municipal vehicle. So all of these things are the essential elements of our model. And as Lubna said, while I think that we've really we have cracked the collection side of things, I think we know different ways in which an efficient collection system could work. Like we know we've operated at a very large scale as well. There were a couple of sort of disruptions between because of the pandemic, but the model became successful very quickly as the incentives are aligned in terms of pricing and other things over a period of time. The model actually scaled up pretty fast, pretty quickly. And we did have, we've had trouble finding sustainable relationships with people who can take this material, offer a price. And the reason they're offering a price is because the quality is something that can be recycled or can be processed by them. So that's an advantage that the Swatch model has. And we're quite confident that as we go along, since we've cracked the collection side of things, as things evolve, there's a lot of focus on whether it's recycling, mechanical or chemical, that this material can be channelized. And this ITC Swatch model does demonstrate that at scale, while widely across the country, it is considered non-recyclable. It only goes for incineration. Through Swatch model, it does find multiple applications at the end of it. And I think it's also important to think about what has really happened because of the law, right? The law came, the EPR came in 2016. It eventually started getting implemented by 2018 at large by the industry. So 2018 to right now, unfortunately, like models like the one that we have in Pune with Swatch, these are still exceptions. They're not the norm. Very few models. We work in some other cities as well. We have our own program. So these are really very niche and not really the norm as such. So what has evolved over the last 3-4 years is that the predominant model in the industry is something which doesn't really keep the waste collector at the center. The intermediaries, the middlemen have become the people who command, who are running the EPR space, who are working with all the brands. So, what has happened, it has really, it has suppressed the price. So on one hand, we have an inclusive EPR model, which comes at a higher cost, which is still an exception, not the norm. On the other hand, you have a proliferation of other models which is mostly, waste trading that happens there. So which are, of course, maybe at a larger scale. That's why they're able to offer more less prices in terms of, the cost to the industry as such. So therefore, it is a big challenge to, how do we mainstream models like Swatch? And policy advocacy is an excellent way, and Lubna articulates some of the most important things that a policy needs to consider. While in writing, a lot of the principles are there, and even in the current law, but on the ground, since it's the market, it's the industry forces, these middlemen, the agencies which are working with brands, they are at the center of it. So I think it's very important to work with that community as well now. How do we ensure that they offer inclusive EPR as a service to all the brands, which may come at a cost, but our firm belief is that over a period of time, as this becomes the norm, as it scales up even more, costs will come down. It will become more efficient. It will become more market driven. We will not have to set a price at a particular level. It would be commanded by the multiple applications that eventually should get set up, and preferably in a local geography, as Lubna said, because you don't want to send materials from one state to like another state, which is like 500,000 kilometers away. So I mean, yeah, at the end of it, once we're able to solve some of the challenges specifically on the end user side, people who can accept multi-layered packaging waste, I think there is a lot of potential in scaling up these models, and also policy can help in replicating these across different geographies, right? Because everywhere we don't have the advantage of a Swatch cooperative. It's a very unique model. It doesn't exist in most large cities. So how do we replicate these best practices, these good practices in other jurisdictions, which may have different elements in there, but as long as you keep the principles the same, as long as you involve the waste collector, as long as you put a market price, as long as you work with the municipal system in place, and you have somebody to buy that waste. If you keep these principles in mind, it is possible to replicate and scale these models across all large cities. So that's, I think, what all of us are working towards as such, right? Thanks so much. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Ankit. And before we continue, I just want to ask everyone to add any questions you might have in the chat, and then we're going to ask the speakers to try to answer some of them at the end of the webinar during the questions and answers session. So please just write in the chat any questions you have, and yeah, so thank you so much. And I'm going to ask Ellie to introduce the next speaker so we can continue with the webinar. Thank you. All right. The next speaker is Dr. Ketaki Gakri, and we'll be speaking about the government perspective on inclusive EPR. So Lubna gave us an introduction about inclusive EPR, and then Ankit gave us the industry perspective, and now we're going to have the government perspective on it. So Dr. Ketaki, please.
Hi, I'm just looking through the list of participants. I don't see her name. I think she may have dropped out. I told her maybe around 7:15. So perhaps she may have joined and dropped out of the call. So maybe we can proceed, and if she joins, I'll ask her to speak.
Sounds good. All right. So you'll be talking about the challenges and demands, because we had this already, didn't we?
Yes. So we can go ahead to questions.
Awesome. All right. All right.
Yeah.
Great. So, Ellie, are you? Do you have...
Yes, I'm here. I think maybe I might have had a technical problem.
Yeah, there's no problem. All
yeah.
right.
Okay. No. Thanks a lot. Yeah. No, thanks to all the speakers. The one issue, perhaps a question to Anek Gupta. I think you've spoken about the fact that in large parts of India we don't have an entity such as Swatch, which allows for this model to exist. So in the last 3 years of this project, how has industry been responding to the model, which is really waste reclaimer centered? What are other players within the industry perceptions are on this model and the possibility of its adoption? And maybe for
let's do one at a time.
One at a time. Okay.
I think it's gonna be easier. Yeah.
Right.
The first one was for?
That was for Anek, and basically, how has industry responded to the model? Because it's an exception at the moment.
Great.
Right. So as I was trying to explain earlier, as ITC, we have not for the purpose of EPR or plastic waste management, we had a long history of running solid waste management programs as part of our CSR activities before. So we run it in large cities, small cities, rural areas also, wherein we work towards behavioral change, we work towards source segregation, we promote decentralized management of waste. So those models already existed in ITC's, sort of repertoire of the work that we were doing anyways. But that was a CSR project that was there. So because we knew that the principles of doing effective plastic waste management through EPR and solid waste management are really the same. So in whichever areas we work, and which I mean that we have a very huge scale, we work across like 20 big cities, even rural districts, and mostly around areas where ITC has factories, which are, we have around 50, 60 factories across the country. So those programs were in existence before that. So we dovetailed our efforts of, we reclaimed plastic from those projects as well, but not as a CSR project. We, as part of our EPR, initiative, as an EPR expense, the business expense, we collect plastic waste from those models as well. So that's how ITC manages. So of course, the industry at large is not, was not blessed with such programs by default. As ITC, we had those programs, so we could leverage them in most of the locations as such. But as I said, what has emerged is that, it has become a service, right? So there are entities who are willing to offer this service to industry at large. And those entities largely, they may or may not be dealing with waste collectors directly. They could be dealing with intermediaries or waste traders in between. So it's very difficult for you to ensure that whether a waste collector has been compensated or not. Even that much, it's very difficult for even a brand who's working with such a partner to ensure at this stage in time, because you must realize that these models have emerged only in the last 1 or 2 or 3 years. So they are still, maturing. So these issues are now, so initially it was just about having that service offered. Now it's about how can you make that service better and more inclusive. So people are coming up, there are a lot of organizations who are offering these services, are trying to, trying to integrate some, if not all, inclusive practices in their models. They're trying to ensure that waste collectors that get compensated, for whatever the brands are paying to that intermediary. But as I said, this is still an exception. It's not the norm. There are very few agencies like Swatch who are there in this country, who are like-minded, who work with waste collectors, who are looking, whose central objective is to have an inclusive EPR. There are very few such organizations that are there, and they are the ones who will, who have tried different models in different cities, and we're working with some of them. So it is still a very open-ended field right now. As we go along, as more models are tested across different areas, we will get to see more innovation and how things work. And A couple of questions are there in the chat box as well for me. So just to clarify, so the SWaCH program is not a CSR project. It's a completely, it's a business model that we're trying to build with SWaCH. And that's how we sort of fund it every month, with them. So it's not a CSR project. It's an EPR program, which is a compliance cost to ITC. It's actually an investment because we feel that in the long term, our costs will come down if such a model succeeds and works and scales up. Right? And absolutely, there is a big, in terms of where the waste goes. So we're able to, through these models, collect a huge quantum of waste, right? We're collecting upwards of like 30,000 tons across the country in a year. Unfortunately, so once you've collected, what do we do with it, right? There is no other large scale channel which the government allows right now, except cement kilns who can absorb this waste. So there is, so we are working on a lot of initiatives where we are trying to work with recycling partners, coming up with more and more applications, whether it's chemical or mechanical recycling, to scale up those investments. Like we're trying to work with recyclers in all 4 parts of the country, so that they can start channelizing some of this waste. So, so it may not happen, in year 1 or year 2. You may still have like 95%, 99% of the waste going to cement kilns right now, but you want to slowly shift it. You want to shift, you want 10% to go for, let's say, road laying, 10% to go for mechanical recycling, 10% to go for chemical recycling, and keep increasing those shares over a period of time. But that ecosystem, unfortunately, is right now pretty absent. Right? There are very few such entities, such startups, such organizations who are in this space, who have the same principles in mind of what it means to have an inclusive APR model. So it's an uphill task, but I think it's something that's fairly possible, and we're working towards it.
Oh, thank you, Ankit. I think we also have a couple of questions here from Musa and Musa Chamani. I don't know if you could pose your question, and then we'll come back to the ones that are also in the chat. Thank you.
Hey, cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for your presentations. I really enjoyed them. But I think Mr. Gupta already answered my question regarding some of the waste streams that they are dealing with as industry. They're sending them to cement kilns. And I heard him saying as well that there is no organization like SWaCH in his country. And I was wondering which country is exactly is he located? And the second one, is he representing all the industries in his country or just a plastic industry? Because in South Africa, we've got PROs, producer organizations, and the EPR system that you are trying to implement, it's gonna be fed by all the producers organizations, and they are developing one plan for all the packaging industries in South Africa. They're developing one plan as packaging, one plan for e-waste, and so on and so on. But to me, it's not clear what Until have presented in that regard. If you can just clarify that for me, I would really appreciate. And thanks.
Before you answer, Ankit, yeah, just to clear, Simon, sorry, Musa, this model is based on what's happening in the city of Pune, and so Ankit is representing ICT, which is a partner in this project to process multi-level plastics. But I think the other things, maybe Ankit the other question, perhaps you could answer. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Musa, for those questions.
Can I come in? There might have been, sorry, Chairperson.
Yeah. No, Simon, can you wait, please? Can you wait? Let Ankit answer the other question. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Now, just to clarify, we're both, the SWaCH and ITC are both based out of India. And I'm sort of speaking mostly as an individual, but I represent ITC, which is a large FMCG company based out of India. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the key question really is, about diversion of materials to cement kilns as a waste treatment method. Whether this is something that you're doing and endorsing, and the reasons behind it, I think.
Right. No, as I said, it's not that we're endorsing it. We have no choice but to divert it to cement plants because there's no other source. There's no sink, as Lubna said, where we can send it right now. We can only send smaller quantities, which we are doing anyways, wherever we can. But because since we're collecting so much, since the law requires us to collect 100% of what we sell in the market, so the only source for the industry is to give it to cement plants right now, unless the recycling ecosystem develops more. So right now that is absent. So in its absence, cement kilns are the only places where we can send waste at that scale. And only smaller quantities can be absorbed by other sort of recyclers or processors. So that's a quandary that we're in, Musa.
No, thank you. Maybe Simon, quickly your question, and then we'll go to Abigna and then Canada in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation. I think listening to the presentation, it reminds me of what we South Africans always say when we present ourselves as waste pickers. We normally say waste picking has two faces. There's a labor or work side, and there's also a business. So normally listening to the presentation, I only hear whereby compensation or model, it's been modeled on the labor side. People forgot that recycling, there's an industry in this sector, which is the recycling industry. And waste pickers are not benefiting. Even if you look at the recycling industry pyramid, the majority, it's waste pickers at the bottom of the pyramid, and you go high up, no waste picker there, even at the top of the pyramid. My concern is when drafting models, if waste pickers are not involved, people normally forgot that waste pickers are in business. The model should show the business sign. Wow, I'd never heard about where the model look into the real value of waste, because that's the most important thing for we, the waste pickers, the real waste pickers. I've been doing this for 23 years. I don't know the real value of any waste material that we pick. If ever we're working with environmentalists, that's where we will understand where EPR comes from. It's not their choice as industries. It's something that has been put to say, this is what you need to do in terms, as producers, in terms of your responsibility. But what we have seen in many EPR schemes, people are now offloading what should have been done by EPR by compensating collection, by compensating environmental pollution. But the reality is, these are producers, they have responsibility. One of their core responsibility is to tell us the real value of their waste or the real value of their product, unless we know the real value of the product.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. I think maybe some of the questions that you are asking, I will maybe direct to Lubna and Supriya. Lubna and Supriya, I think the issue of in your perspective, what benefits do you think are derived from this kind of system? Is it really a waste reclaimer centered, a waste picker centered model that SWaCH is and ICT are engaged in? And then we'll come back to the other questions that are in the chat. Thank you. If we can give them a few minutes, please.
कचरा वेचकांचा ह्याच्यात फायदा आहे की नाही हा विचारताय.
कचरा वेचकांचा फायदा आहे की, कारण की हे ज्याला कमी भाव होता ते आता 4 रुपयांनी भेटतोय म्हणून फायदा आहे. आणि आता भेटायला लागले म्हणून EPRचा कायदा आणून ती ह्याला सांगते ती काय की त्या मिशनी ज्यांनी तयार केले त्यांना सांगते काय की तुम्ही आमच्याकडून द्या घ्या म्हणून.
कशाचं मशीन?
हे मशीन नाही, हे ह्याला पुनर्निर्मितीला
तुम्ही कराल.
म्हणून निर्मिती आम्ही करून आम्हाला जर त्यांनी पैसे दिले किंवा त्यांनी मिशन दिली आणि आम्ही शिकू जसे आम्ही स्वच्छ संस्था जसं आम्ही कागद काष्टकरी संस्था केली तसं आम्ही ह्याला जर यांनी जर परत जर केलं आम्हाला मिशन दिले मिशनला बनवायला पैसे दिले तर आम्ही पूर्ण निर्मितीवर इल्वाट लावायचं बी करू की मग त्यातच शिकून घेऊ सगळं.
So Supriya Bhadakwad is saying that in this right now there is a benefit because what they were getting no money for, now they are getting 4 rupees a kilo. To the question of where the waste should go after that, she's saying that we have come a long way already and we are doing door-to-door collection for the whole city. Whatever money is being put into EPR, why don't you give it to us? We will set up the machines, we will buy the machines, you train us, we will learn how to do it. We will run the machines, we will set the system from end to end. Why not leave it in our hands? Why should we depend on others? We are more than capable of learning it if we just know what the technology is and how to use it.
Thank you. I think there's also a question from Kananda Rao, who's asking, what is the process of documenting the model that SWaCH and ICT and all the partners are actually developing? In what is the process? How is it being documented? And I suppose the next question is it going to be available to everyone else to learn from?
So one of the biggest features of this is that it actually sits on the SWaCH cooperative model of solid waste management in Pune city. And our recommendation would be for these kind of systems to sit on the existing system and not set up a new system that doesn't work with the informal waste collection system that is there in any given city. So obviously the solutions will have to be tailor-made based on the city. We have documented, we've written a case study on everything that we've discussed, including some of the early discussions had about what the principles would be of this agreement, why it works for ITC, why it works for SWaCH, what challenges we face, which will be released on the Globalrec website very soon. So that documentation is always available. For more detailed questions, we are always available. Our details can be shared.
Oh, thank you. And then for all the panelists, I think there was I don't know if it was answered. I can't keep up with the chat at the moment. There's a question from Sophie van der Berg about the kinds of products, which are actually processed out of multi-level plastics that are collected. I know you mentioned the challenge of manufacturers closing, processors closing, the distance issues, but where you are able to, what exactly is produced?
Sure. We have sent it to a few different types of people. So there has been a time where we had to send it to RDF plants, refuse derived fuel plants, where they are just shredding it, compacting it, and sending it forward to cement plants as feedstock. We have also sent it to a few waste to energy, so plastic to fuel plants that are essentially burning through some kind of pyrolysis or technology to try to recover oil or fuel from it. Our experience is that these are the plants that typically tend to shut down and not run sustainably and not run with large quantities and for a long period of time. We have sold twice to 2 people who claim to be recycling. I say claim because I don't understand the technology myself. What I understand is these are people who are able to remove the metallized content from the plastic. So the inside layer of foil is able to be removed, but the remaining plastic is still a mix of different types of plastic. So recycling that, truly recycling that still remains a problem. So this is usually used for lower value products. So one issue is always color, because it's always colorful. You can't get a clearer or lighter colored plastic out of it. So people who use this plastic from MLP usually use it as a permissible additive. So if they are recycling 100 tons, they would put in 5 tons of this plastic, and it doesn't deteriorate the quantity too much. But those items like buckets, chairs, crates then have to be dyed a very dark color, like a dark green or a purple or a black, and they're not available in better looking, more consumer friendly colors. And their quality is also lower than a PP bucket or an HDPE bucket. Some we have just started sending it to a person who is trying to make pallet boards, so a replacement of particle board that is usually made from wood chips. So something like that. It remains to be seen how sustainable this particular option is, but nobody is truly able to recycle so MLP back into MLP because it's so many different materials. And what tends to happen is that you get a very low value product at the end of it. One issue that has been communicated to us from the two people who are doing the recycling, so either as that permissible additive in recycling and other plastic or into these particle boards, the problem on their end has always been cost recovery of that final product, because it is lower value than the single source materials that are available as a replacement to that material.
No, thank you. The ones they had, I think maybe the person might have dropped out. I don't see them. Pinky, if they are still there, maybe they can direct their question in the chat. And then there was also a follow-up question from Abigna Argala. I apologize for butchering all your names. But they want to know if Swatch has different models in different areas of Pune, you know, for collection, because you're working with the ICT specifically on multi-level plastics. You know, what other models are there that are being used?
So Swatch does a few different things. The core activity of Swatch, which it does in partnership with the PMC, is door-to-door collection of waste. And there are a lot of add-on activities like the multi-layered plastic collection that we are doing. And many of them are in this similar vein of producer taking responsibility for a difficult to recycle or non-recycled material. We have a few other projects. One is on sanitary waste, in which we are trying to create a separate waste stream. So we have achieved pretty high levels of wet and dry waste segregation, and we are currently working on creating sanitary waste as a third category, so that waste pickers don't have to handle it when going through dry waste, and that material can follow a separate stream and be processed, or not recycled obviously, but processed independently. We are also working on a similar thing for thermocol, which is one very, very problematic material, maybe even more so than MLP, just because of the sheer weight to volume ratio of that material. Because of that very skewed weight to volume ratio, we are not able to do it in a way that we are able to do MLP, because the viability of that system just does not work out. But we are trying to do that at a city level. So instead of aggregating from individual waste pickers, we are aggregating at a few, about 6 to 7 points in the city. So where we're able to get more, and then we pass it back to the producer who is working on a technology to recycle it back into thermocol. So this is just a few of the things we are doing. We're also doing composting, where waste pickers who are working at societies, institutions, or other bulk waste generators are also providing a composting service where they manage the composting pit and manage that in situ composting. I think Lakshmi also mentioned, just within the door-to-door collection part, there are different systems depending on the, so a slum area would have a different system, a society area would have a different system. Some societies have gate collection. So you collect right at the gate. At most places we go, waste pickers go right till the door. So it is somewhat tailor-made depending on the local situation. And there is a lot of value-added activities that waste pickers are also doing, like plastic and thermocol, in addition to, of course, recovering all the recyclables, which they have been doing even before the Swatch model.
Thank you.
प्लास्टिक तयार करावं हे असलं नाही करावं ते आपल्याला घेण्यात आलं. त्यांनी म्हणजे जे भावामध्ये 4 ऐवजी 5 नाही घ्यावं, एकच करावं प्लास्टिक तयार करून. हे असं सदरात ते त्याच्यावर जाहिरात काढून विकण्यासाठी त्यांचा फायदा होतोय, आणि दुसरी लस्कर आपली होती. कसं करायचं खरं म्हणजे?
Supriya, don't make plastic like this, which can't be recycled and that we are only able to sell in 4 rupees. Why don't you just make, I mean, you as in the producers of the plastic, make a material that can fetch not 4, but 5 or 6 or 10 rupees, and that we are actually able to sort and sell without any of this. So that should be thought of. Companies are thinking more about putting their brand on a colorful paper, but not really about whether it is worth it for us to pick it up.
So, sorry, I have to interrupt. Just to, as a follow-up, exactly my point. Why is there a disparity in price mechanism? Because when you look at the MLP to cement cleanse and with the Swatch model, it is 4 rupees. But whereas plastic to road making is much higher, like for instance, in Bangalore, Hasrutala, there is a cost of 16 rupees. But I was at another webinar hosted by GIZ, and there the person from Himachal said that they were almost paying up to 32 rupees. So because an MLP is MLP sorting and segregating is backbreaking, why the 4 rupees rate, and how does it work, from a ROI perspective?
Thank you, Vicky. Yeah, good question. Lubna, are you able to, I don't know if you managed to pick up the question. You were doing interpretation. The question is why? Yeah. Oh, you got the question?
No, can you just summarize it? Supriya actually has a point to make.
Okay. No, I think the question is really why are we finding such a difference in price? And she was mentioning the fact that she went to a seminar where up to 30 rupees were being paid for processing of this. But so why the 4 rupees in this instance? Why is there such a huge disparity in the prices that are being paid?
So I'll just add to it, Lubna. I just wanted to figure out how does the ROI work? Because when you look at plastic to roads, it's much higher. It's in Bangalore, for instance, it's 16 rupees, whereas in Himachal it is 32 rupees. But for MLP, it is only around the 4 rupees range, whereas but with MLP, it is much more backbreaking for the waste pickers. So how does this whole thing work? And what can we do to actually ensure that we make it on par with plastic to road versus plastic to cement cleans?
Honestly, I feel the biggest gap here is really legislation and a bargaining power that an organization like us has relative to the industry partner, who determines at the end of the day how much they are willing to do. So we started this system for the first year, less than a year, for the first 7 to 8 months. We were not paying 4 rupees. We were only able to pay 2.5 rupees. But we got very, very, very strong feedback from waste pickers that it just doesn't work out in 2.5 rupees. It just doesn't make any sense for them to put their time and effort towards it. Once we increased it to 4 rupees, we were able to do it, but it wasn't an easy increase. So any rupee, any half a rupee increase is an increase in cost that the corporate has to pay without a mandated requirement on them to do EPR. So unless there is strong legislation that is asking corporates to pay a certain amount or to pay for a certain quantity or to be really linked to a very strong penalty, it really lies with who has the most bargaining power. And for us, the bottom line is, as long as waste pickers are getting 4 rupees as opposed to 0 and it's working out today, it's better than losing out on those 4 rupees today, but fighting for that 4 rupees to become 10.
I just want to quickly add, Harshad has also responded to this, that 4 rupees is the price paid to the waste picker, the rate per kilo. If you're looking at the 32 rupees in Himachal Pradesh or the 16 rupee rate for roads, that's a cost to the system. The cost to the system even here is much higher. And in fact, the argument is that the producer should take that viability cost gap funding. And if it is not viable for the producer to take it as the demands increase, if and when they increase, because it's not viable, say at some point in time for the waste picker at 4 rupees, then the manufacturer should figure out whether that material is worth producing at all in the first place. But just to clarify, 4 rupees is the price only that the waste picker gets per kilo.
No, thank you. And I think that Poonama also has made a contribution to that. Sorry, yeah, is that a question, Poonama? But before Poonama, there's also Canada. Maybe you can pose your question. I apologize again for mispronouncing your name. Sorry.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so. Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for the session, guys. So I have been working in the MLP sector and also have been working with the waste workers for past three years in Karnataka and also in Telangana. So I think by far not many waste speakers know what exactly is MLP, and there is a huge gap of awareness which has been there in the market also, because when this packaging was done and then it was ending up in all dump yards and landfills, I felt they had to take a solution for this, and that's how they brought up something called waste to energy, and that's what they have been diverting it to a cement factory. But lately, when we started doing this procuring of MLPs, I totally understand by what the previous speaker has said, that the MLP was sold for 16 rupees also. And the problem was that, like Lubna said, the brand has to take care of this very problem that have they started, which is a manufacturing problem. It is a defect. And I still believe that, like I asked the question, people like me, people in the industry, those who want to really be part of this problem, they want to find a solution for this. And many guys like me are looking forward to do something in this space, basically to start with MLP, because when we started off with MLP, the pricing was 9 rupees, and now the MLP is at 2.5 rupees. Now, honestly speaking, recently there has been a few compliances by ULB. The government says that, the brand says that you need to get me a ULB, then I can pay you a 50 paisa or a rupee more. And it becomes really hard for people like me. There are a group of people like me who want to do something in EPR sector. And I've been doing this for 3 years in the South. And this year, it has been very difficult because of the ULB certification. And I believe ITC is doing by far well and also doing some projects in and outside the cities. And I believe there are very few, I think there are 1 or 2 organizations in the entire country who are actually dispatching MLP. And I would actually request, if there's an industry person who can also guide youngsters like me, a bunch of guys who want to do something in space. Otherwise, it is going to be very difficult for people like me who want to enter this sector. And right now, I'm thinking to look for another option because of so many compliances in place. So I would really request, if there is any industry person here who can actually help, getting more people and youngsters who can be part of this problem, which is a waste management in India.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if there's someone who can.
Yeah. I was just addressing Kannada's comments. Actually, I'm working with so many startups already, like for the past 3-4 years, who are interested in setting up innovative collection models, who are interested in doing innovative recycling. So I'll be happy to share all the details, insights that you want from our prior experience, what works, what doesn't work, any guidance that you may need, I'll be happy to offer. And there are many startups who are working right now, innovative collection models, plus trying to process MLP packaging into useful. So we've done a pilot with a couple of recyclers for manufacturing, the storage pallets that you use in warehouses. So we're trying to do a model where ITC, not only collects all the waste, but we use it back in our operations only. So we have a lot of warehouse across the country where we use storage pallets. So we're trying to fabricate storage pallets from MLP waste. And a couple of recyclers and startups are working in that space, and some of them are working with other brands also. So I'll be happy to guide you, Kannan.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Punama, perhaps you could ask your question. Punama?
Hi, yeah, I already did actually. I just wanted to know what is the actual rate paid to, I wanted to ask Pinky, what is the actual rate paid that is paid to waste, because the per kg rate for bringing in the MLP in Bangalore and in Himachal.
Okay. Pinky, are you able to answer?
Okay. I'll with Himachal, what this person from the was it Dr. Suresh from Himachal? I didn't get the full name, but I can check and get back to you. But he mentioned something around 75 rupees a kg. So that was something which was very shocking for me. But in Bangalore, I think with the 16 rupees, I think it also includes post shredding, baling, and all the other things that go in. and it was 16 rupees plus GST for Hasirudala as an organization. I'll have to check what is the rate paid to the waste pickers.
So I think maybe Ankit can give us an idea of what ITC is at least paying waste pickers directly for that part of the chain. Just to clarify once more, Lakshmi already said this, but the system has many costs, one of which is the payment that is given directly to the waste pickers for the initial round of collection of waste. After that, there is a cost of transporting, aggregating, sorting, baling, rent, utilities of the baling facility, coordination costs, the cost of documentation of that entire system, maintaining all the documents and accounts for the traceability of that system, all of which leads to a system cost of much, much higher than 4 rupees. And very much to ITC's credit, they have paid in bad months upwards of 20, 30 rupees a kg to help set this system. So like Ankit was saying, there are huge economies of scale to this kind of work. So ITC has paid very, very high costs during setup phases of this system, even after COVID, when there was a gap, even during COVID, to keep the system ready to go right after the restrictions were lifted. So that amounts to a much, much higher cost than the 4 rupees. The 4 rupees is actually the value that we as a waste picker organization see today, which is 4 rupees in our hand against every kilo, as opposed to no rupees and more pollution. So ITC has paid much, much more for the system itself. Maybe Ankit can explain that. I think I understand that 4 rupees is the highest that ITC is paying waste pickers directly. But please correct me if I'm wrong.
So Lubna, I think, there was a time, I think somebody also mentioned that in the market, MLP was commanding upwards of 8 or 10 rupees, like 3-4 years back. Even cement kilns were willing to pay that much amount of money, because cement kilns also have a compliance requirement. They are supposed to process a certain percentage of plastic waste every year to meet their compliance. The intent behind the Swatch ITC model was that eventually the money that goes to the waste collector has to rise, because the idea was that we would be able to get a buyer in the end who would be willing to pay a larger price, right? Because somebody is able to process plastic waste at a certain cost and sell it in the market at a much, much higher margin, then they're also willing to pay that much money. For example, the same waste, the MLP waste, which goes from our factories that manufacture this product. So post-industrial MLP waste, that commands 15-16 rupees a kg or 12 rupees a kg when it goes to a recycler, because it is clean, it's certain. So idea was that we bring post-consumer waste up to that quality level, so that much money can be compensated by somebody who's buying it in the end. So, and that's how you'll get like a market-driven model which compensates fairly for the the waste stream that's being collected. That was the intent from the beginning. Yeah. But as I said, it's true that those applications are missing right now. People, who can absorb and utilize this material and produce something at a higher margin. There are very few recyclers who are able to do that.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you very much, Ankit. Look, Ankit, I was wondering if there's a little bit of a debate in the chats, which I'm not sure you've seen, about the startups and competition with reclaimers for opportunities, which in a sense goes back to the question of how this model could possibly be expanded to other areas. So I was wondering if you have any comment in terms of the competition for materials between the middlemen and the reclaimers, and the marginalization.
That's a fair debate and a question, because that has actually happened. When I meant startups, I meant startups who are principally aligned to some of the things I said before in terms of having an inclusive APR, but they're complementing the reclaimers model. So they're not competing with the reclaimers. That's the kind of startups that I was mentioning, who can utilize the scale and the efficiency in terms of collection of the waste reclaimer, and then buy that material from that waste reclaimer, and then process that into something new. So that's what I meant. But there are startups who have entered the collection space also, who have maybe bypassed the waste collector, who are probably not able to monitor what price is being paid to the waste. As I said, I mentioned earlier, it's become more like a trade where you have several middlemen who are trading in waste, and you don't have traceability on what price is being paid to the waste collector. Unfortunately, that is the predominant model that has come in. But at the same time, there are other places where as somebody else mentioned in Bangalore and other places, where a sort of fair price, if because there is no market which determines this price right now. So whatever one is able to pay, one pays in different jurisdictions. That's why the price varies from location to location. But if you have in the end an end user who's able to process it and prepare a product which he can sell at a higher margin, you will obviously command a higher price. So a 12 rupees, 16 rupees is a doable thing if you're able to get the recyclers in place.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if we have any more questions or issues that we want to raise. If not, I was going to perhaps give the panelists maybe an opportunity to sum up, to make comments and some closing remarks. Yeah, I don't see any other questions at the moment. I don't know. Maybe we could start with Lubna. You spoke about the challenges of the process and some of the opportunities and what SWaCH is doing to deal with that. And I was wondering if you have any, last remarks in terms of other waste pickers, other people that are looking at the model from the waste picker side, at least from this perspective. What are the things that we need to look out for, and how do we overcome some of the key issues that you mentioned as obstacles to the model?
So one key thing that I mentioned in the presentation to reiterate is definitely that we need very strong policy. As long as EPR is voluntary, we end up in this space of each of us passing the onus of the recyclability onto each other, which ultimately determines whether the systems fail or not. So if there is strong legislation that pushes producers of plastic either to rethink what they are producing and stop producing mixed materials and produce only single source materials that have their own market value and can pay for their own recycling, it will make a big difference. If companies are encouraged to actually set up, or not encouraged, but forced to actually set up the recycling facilities for all of the material they produce, strong legislation can go a long way in making sure that the door is not open to greenwashing, the door is not open to excluding informal sector workers. If we have strong penalties and strong legislation in place, I think it can go a long way. Supriya Thai has some remarks as well on EPR, on producers, on plastics.
EPR जो कायदा आलेला आहे ना, त्याच्यामध्ये जी प्लास्टिक जी तुम्ही घेणार आहे ती डायरेक्ट डंपिंग घेतात ना, ती कॉर्पोरेशनकडे घेण्याच्या ऐवजी जेवढे आमचे कचरा वेचक आहेत ना तेवढ्याकडूनच घ्यावं, जेवढे कचऱ्याचे काम करतात ती, जे कचरा वेचणारे आहेत ते त्यांच्याकडूनच जे प्लास्टिक घ्यावं, बाकी कोणाकडून घेऊन नये.
Supriya Thai is saying that as there is more pressure to recover plastics, don't do it from large centralized godowns, don't do it from vehicles that go to a warehouse where you pick up all the plastics. Do it through us, do it through waste pickers. Whatever you are picking up should be channeled through us. त्यांना ऐकू नाही आलं, पण आलं असेल की नाही, नाही मी नाही सांगितलं. मटेरियल बद्दल सांगा तुम्ही. काय हे मटेरियल काय बनवायचं, कसं बनवायचं, आपण बनवायचं नाही, त्यांनी बनवायचं, तेच चांगलं आहे. सांगा बोला ना, हे जण ऐकायला असलं मटेरियल जे आहे ते असं नाही बनवायचं, चांगलं बनवायचं, चांगलं क्वालिटीचं. जे प्लास्टिक जे चांगलं भारी आहे ना, पांढरं सफेद, त्याच्या प्रकारचं बनवायचं, म्हणजे त्याला भाव बी भेटतो आणि ते जास्ती रस्त्यावर पडत बी नाही. हे रस्त्यावर कुठं बी पडते. Supriya Thai is saying that more thought should go into the plastics that are being produced. If you make clear plastics and good quality plastics, single source, single material items, you don't see those as pollution because we are able to pick up all of it. These are the only types of plastics that you see as litter because we are not able to sell them and nobody is able to pick them up. So if companies actually produce high quality, recyclable, highly recyclable plastics, we will be able to pick it up. It's very difficult to recover these materials. They get stuck everywhere. It's tough to pick up and they just end up as pollution everywhere.
No, thank you very much. Ankit, I don't know if you have any last words of wisdom for us who are looking at you and the model that you and SWaCH are working on.
I mean, no wisdom from my end, but I think it's quite an encouraging conversation we've had. We're trying to keep the waste reclaimer at the center. And I completely agree that the prices have to be higher, but for us to imagine a system where higher prices are paid, we need to look at more, applications that compensate more. We need to ensure that those come in place. And till the time they don't come in place, of course, the model will be subsidized, or this viability gap funding process will sort of continue as we have with SWaCH. But for a long-term solution, we need to have those applications in place. And that's where a lot of work needs to go in, both from innovative startups or conventional people who want to work in this space. That's I think the need of the hour, because with SWaCH, we've understood collection in a very nice way of what's the right way to collect, what is the efficient way to collect at scale. Now it's the time to see, where can it end up, where you can deliver more and more value to the system. So that's all from my end.
No, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Ankit. And I just wanted to, I think, to thank the panelists for their participation and the very informative presentations that have been given to us. It's a pity, I think we lost one of our key panelists who was going to speak on behalf of the Pune Municipal Corporation, so that we could look at the model from the side of the municipality as well. I think that as one of the commenters in the chat has succinctly commented, that the issue of the manufacture of plastic materials that are very difficult to process, as Supriya also has eloquently stated, means that we are passing on the cost, of this to future generations. And I think we all know what is happening to the climate, and we can't really afford to pass the cost on to future generations. And I just wanted to congratulate SWaCH, ICT, and also the municipality of Pune for the very innovative model that they've come out with. And that, several of us, from speaking for myself in South Africa and some of my colleagues from African Climate Organization, we are very interested in the model that is being innovated in Pune. And we will have a lot of follow-up questions that we will need to pose to Supriya and others. And so from my side, I just wanted to say thank you and hand over to the coordinator of this series of seminars, Eduardo. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone who attended, the panelists, Ellie for being doing the moderation. To end this webinar, I just want to share with you the website that we launched this month. It's epr.globalhack.org. I'm sending the link in the chat. It's a dedicated page for all things EPR, so you can find in the website all of the case studies that we're discussing during our webinar series. You can find presentations, keynotes, images, blog posts. The idea is that you have all of the information about EPR gathered in this website that I'm sharing now. So please visit, share with your networks. Make sure you're always checking it to see the latest posts and latest additions. We currently have it in English and Spanish. We're adding more languages. We're adding French. We're adding some other languages in the upcoming weeks. So this should be your go-to source for everything EPR. And we also launched this month a video that you can watch on the website, which is a quick video to explain what is EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility. So it's a nice first approach if someone doesn't know what EPR is or is starting to work with or learn about it. So please make sure you check it. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know if I introduced myself at the very beginning of the webinar, but if I didn't, my name is Eduardo. I work with the Globalrec communications team. Globalrec is the Global Alliance of Waste Speakers, and we provide support for organizations in more than 28 countries. So if you guys have any questions, we have our Twitter, we have Instagram, we have our direct channels on email or in this website that I just showed you. Make sure to get in touch with us. And we should be having the next webinar of the EPR series in next week, early October. We're going to be sharing all of the details, registration links in our social media. So make sure you follow us and keep in touch. Thank you so much and bye-bye. And of course, one last thing, I saved all of the questions that came up in the chat. If any of them wasn't answered, we're going to try to have the panelists answering them offline, and then I'm going to be sharing on our social channels. All right. So don't worry if your question wasn't answered, but I think most of them were. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.